Did you ever wonder what's really out there, lurking just beyond the firelight? Things that don't just haunt the woods, but follow you home. Welcome to NoSleep Nightmares Reddit, where the shadows breathe and the nightmares don't end. Tonight, I've got a collection of horrors, tales of caves that whisper your name, trails stalked by silent terrors, and strangers who bring more than chaos. One story hides a twist so dark, it's probably watching you right now. Stick around to the end, because the last tale might be the one you can't unhear. But first, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a like. Help me claw to 1,000 subs so I can unleash more sleepless nights. Ready? Let's dive into the dark. It started with a scream. Not the kind you'd expect out here. No animal howl or startled yelp from a twisted ankle. This was raw, jagged human. A sound that didn't belong in the endless sprawl of the Bitterroot Mountains. We all froze, the 5 of us, our laughter dying around the campfire like a snuffed candle. The night pressed in closer, the shadows stretching longer across the dirt, and I swear I felt the air shift, like something massive had just exhaled behind us. Probably just a hiker, Matt said, his voice too loud, too forced. He tossed another log onto the fire, sparks spiraling up into the black. People get lost up here all the time. Yeah, Sarah agreed, pulling her jacket tighter. Or maybe it's a bear. You know, doing its best impression. She forced a laugh, but it cracked halfway through. I didn't say anything. I was too busy staring into the trees, where the pines stood like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the starless sky. That scream hadn't sounded like a hiker or a bear. It sounded like someone who'd just seen something they couldn't unsee. And out here, 200 kilometers from the nearest hospital, with no cell service and no roads for miles, that wasn't a comforting thought. This was our annual trip. Me, Matt, Sarah, Jen, and Chris. Every year, we'd pile into Matt's beat-up Jeep, loaded with gear, and vanish into the wilderness. It was our reset, our escape from the grind of city life. We'd been doing it since college, picking spots so remote you could scream for hours and no one would hear you. That was the appeal. Pure isolation, until this year, when Matt decided to shake things up. Guys, I invited someone, he'd said, back at the trailhead, grinning like a kid who just won a bet. My co-worker, Derek, cool guy. He's been dying to get out here with us. We'd groaned, mostly jokingly. Tradition was sacred, and a newcomer felt like an intrusion, but Matt vouched for him. Said Derek was laid back, outdoorsy, the kind of guy who'd fit right in. So we shrugged it off. What's one more around the fire, right? Derek showed up an hour later, trudging up the trail with a pack slung over one shoulder, and a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was tall, wiry, with a buzz cut and a faded army surplus jacket. Normal enough, I guess. But from the moment he dropped his gear by the campsite, something felt off. He was too eager, too quick to laugh, too loud with his stories about bar fights and hunting trips. It was like he was auditioning for a role we hadn't offered. That first night, we tried to ignore it. We set up camp in a hollow, a natural bowl of earth ringed by jagged cliffs and thick forest. The fire roared. The beer flowed, and for a while, it was just like old times. Jen told her usual ghost stories, Chris cracked dumb jokes, and Sarah hummed some half-remembered song. Derek sat a little apart, nursing a can of cheap lager, his eyes flicking between us like he was sizing us up. So, Derek, Jen said, leaning forward with a smirk, what's your deal? Matt says you're some kind of survivalist or something. He chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. Something like that. Grew up in the sticks. Learned how to handle myself out there. He tapped the hunting knife on his belt. A wicked, serrated thing that looked more suited for gutting a bear than peeling an apple. Never know what you'll run into, right? Yeah, Chris said, raising his beer. Like us. Bunch of city idiots who'd starve without a cooler. We laughed. Derek didn't. He just stared into the fire, the flames dancing in his eyes, and muttered, "You'd be surprised what's out here." That should have been our first red flag, but we were buzzed, cozy, and too caught up in the moment to care. The night rolled on, the fire dwindled, and one by one we crawled into our tents. I zipped mine shut, listening to the wind rattle the pines, and tried to shake the unease creeping up my spine. It was nothing, I told myself. Just a new guy trying too hard. Then came the scream. It was maybe 2 a.m. when it tore through the camp. I bolted upright, my sleeping bag tangling around my legs. Outside, I heard rustling, tents unzipping, muffled curses. I stumbled out into the cold, my flashlight beam slicing through the dark. The others were already up, their faces pale in the flickering light. "What the hell was that?" Jen whispered, her voice trembling. "Sounded close," Chris said, peering toward the cliffs. "Like, right over there." Derek emerged last, his knife already in hand. He didn't say a word, just stood there, head cocked like a predator listening for prey. The silence after the scream was worse than the sound itself. Heavy, suffocating, like the forest was holding its breath. "Maybe we should check it out," Matt suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "Are you insane?" Sarah snapped. "It's pitch black out there. We're not wandering off to play hero." "She's right," I said. "Whatever it was, it's gone now. Let's just stay put." Derek snorted, a sharp, derisive sound. "Gone? You think something screams like that and just walks away?" He stepped toward the edge of the firelight, his silhouette stark against the trees. "Something's out there, and it's not scared of us." "Shut up, man," Chris said, but his voice wavered. "You're freaking everyone out." Derek turned, his grin back, but it was different now, sharper, hungrier. "Good. You should be freaked out." That's when the night went sideways. It started with the jokes. Derek got louder, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. At first, it was dumb stuff, crude one-liners about camping and beer. Then it turned personal. He mocked Jen's ghost stories, called Chris a lightweight, told Sarah she'd scream prettier than that hiker if something got her. We tried to laugh it off, but the edge in his tone grew sharper, his eyes glinting with something dark. "Dude, chill," Matt said finally, standing up. "You're killing the vibe." Derek's grin vanished. He lurched to his feet, swaying slightly, and for a second, I thought he was just drunk. Then he lunged. Not at Matt, at Chris, his fist connected with Chris's jaw, a sickening crack echoing through the hollow. Chris hit the ground hard, groaning, and before we could react, Derek was on him, screaming nonsense about weak links and proving a point. "Get off him," Jen yelled, grabbing a stick from the fire. She swung it, embers scattering, and Derek stumbled back, laughing, a wild, unhinged sound that made my skin crawl. Matt tackled him, pinning him to the dirt. "What the hell's wrong with you?" "That's the hollow for you, where strangers turn feral and something older watches from the trees. But what if the dark doesn't just wait outside? What if it pulls you in, deep underground, where the walls whisper back? Our next nightmare takes us there, a cave that doesn't let go even when you think you've escaped. Brace yourself. The abyss is calling. It started with a dare. That's how most bad ideas begin when you're 13, isn't it? Too young to know better, too stupid to care. My buddy Kyle was the one who threw it out there, his grin wide and reckless as we sat on his back porch, the summer sun dipping low over the sprawling countryside just beyond our sleepy suburb. "You ever hear about the caves out in the park?" he asked, kicking at a loose board. "The old mine shafts, they're supposed to be haunted." I rolled my eyes. Haunted's just what people say when they're bored. Probably just a bunch of rocks and bat crap. "Maybe," he said, leaning closer, his voice dropping. "But my cousin went in one last year. Said he heard stuff. Voices, like someone was down there with him. He didn't stick around to find out what." I laughed it off, but the hook was in. Kyle knew how to get me. Call me chicken, and I'd prove him wrong every time. So we made a plan. I'd sleep over at his place that Friday, and the next morning we'd hike out to the national park a few miles from his house. It was a massive stretch of wilderness, rolling hills, dense woods, and those caves, remnants of some long-dead mining operation. Adventure was the bait. Pride was the trap. Friday night, I tossed my sleeping bag on his floor, staring at the ceiling while he snored. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning, half excitement, half something else I couldn't name. By 8 a.m., we were up, grabbing snacks from the corner store, chips, soda, a couple candy bars, and slinging our backpacks over our shoulders. The park was gorgeous that morning, all blue skies and bird song, the kind of day that makes you feel invincible. We hit the first cave 20 minutes in. It was small, shallow, ending in a rusty metal gate locked tight. Kyle said they sealed some off after cave-ins years back, but it didn't stop us. We flicked on our flashlights, cheap ones from the dollar store, barely cutting through the gloom, and poked around. The air was cool, damp, smelling of wet stone and something faintly sour. We ate some chips in the chamber, the crunch echoing off the walls, then moved on. The next few caves were more of the same. Longer tunnels, some with beer cans and graffiti, teenage relics of parties past. It was fun, easy, the thrill of exploration keeping us grinning. But then we found it. An hour and a half into the hike, we stumbled across a cave that didn't fit the pattern. The entrance was wider, jagged, like a mouth that had been ripped open rather than carved. No cans, no tags, just silence and shadow. I stopped at the threshold, my flashlight beam trembling slightly as it hit the dark. Something about it felt wrong, like the air was thicker, heavier. My stomach twisted, but Kyle was already stepping inside, his light bouncing off the rough walls. "You coming or what?" he called, not looking back. I swallowed the unease. Yeah, don't wet your pants. But I was lying. The second I crossed into that cave, the wrongness sank deeper. The cave didn't just swallow us that day. It consumed us, piece by piece, through every sense I had. It started with the air. The moment we crossed that jagged threshold, it hit me. A damp, cloying heaviness that clung to my skin like a second layer. It wasn't just cold. It was invasive, seeping into my lungs with every breath, thick with the scent of decay. Not rot, exactly. Something older, sourer, like stone that had been soaked in despair for centuries. My cheap flashlight flickered, its beam struggling against the dark, and I caught whiffs of something metallic, sharp, like blood spilled long ago and left to rust. I told myself it was my imagination, but my nose burned with it, a stench that lingered in the back of my throat, coating my tongue until I could taste the cave itself. Then there was the sound, or the lack of it. Outside, The park had been alive. Birds chirping, leaves rustling, the distant hum of summer wind. But in here, nothing. A silence so complete it pressed against my eardrums, a void that made every step echo like a gunshot. My sneakers scuffed the dirt, and the sound bounced off the walls, distorted, coming back to me warped and unfamiliar. Kyle's breathing was the only anchor, shallow and quick, but even that felt swallowed by the stillness. Then the drip started, slow, rhythmic, somewhere deep in the tunnel. Plink, plink, plink. Each one hit like a hammer on my nerves, steady but uneven, like something pacing us, counting down. I swung my light toward it, but the source stayed out of reach, a phantom heartbeat in the dark. The wind came next, and that's when my skin turned traitor. It wasn't a breeze you'd expect in a cave. There were no openings, no drafts to explain it. It started at my ankles, a faint tickle, like spider legs skittering over my socks. I jerked my foot, shining the light down, but the dirt was bare, undisturbed. The sensation crept higher, brushing my calves, then my thighs, cold and deliberate, like invisible fingers tracing my outline. I slapped at my legs, heart pounding, but there was nothing to hit. Kyle didn't notice. He was too busy pushing deeper, but I felt it climb, grazing my arms, my neck, my face. It was intimate, invasive, a touch that knew me, and I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood just to keep from screaming. The whispers were worse. They didn't hit all at once. They slithered in, soft as a sigh, weaving through the silence. At first, I thought it was Kyle, muttering under his breath, but he was ahead of me, silent, his light steady. The voices came from everywhere, behind, above, below, murmurs too faint to decipher, a chorus of secrets in a language I didn't know. They overlapped, hissed, giggled, a cacophony of shadows given sound. My flashlight shook as I spun, the beam catching nothing but rock, but the whispers followed, curling around my ears like smoke. I clapped a hand over one, then the other, but they burrowed deeper, vibrating in my skull until I couldn't tell if they were outside or inside me. "Kyle," one said, clear as day, and I froze. He didn't hear it, didn't even flinch, but I did, and it wasn't my voice. The screams broke me. They erupted from the tunnel ahead, low and guttural at first, like a growl torn from a dying throat. Then they multiplied, dozens, hundreds, a symphony of anguish that clawed at the air. Men's voices, women's, children's, screeching, sobbing, pleading, layered over each other until the sound was a physical thing, slamming into me, rattling my bones. My ears rang, my head throbbed, and I dropped to my knees, hands pressed to my skull. But it didn't stop. The screams grew louder, closer, and I swear I felt breath on my neck, hot, ragged, stinking of rot. My light hit the ground, rolling, casting wild shadows that danced like the damned, and I saw shapes in them. Flickers of arms, legs, faces twisted in agony, gone before I could focus. The hands were the final straw. Not metaphors, real, tangible grips, cold as ice, latching onto me. They yanked at my shirt, my hair, my ankles, pulling in every direction like I was a rag doll in a tug of war. I thrashed, swung my fists, but they tightened, nails digging into my skin, leaving welts I'd find later, red, raw, unexplained. My flashlight swung as I ran, the beam a frantic strobe, and every scrape against the walls burned, blood trickling down my arms, warm against the chill. The gate loomed, and I slammed into it, the metal biting my palms, my fingers fumbling, slick with sweat and fear. The hands didn't let go until I was out, collapsing in the sun, the world spinning as my senses screamed. That cave didn't just scare me, it invaded me, left its mark in every breath, every sound, every touch. We collapsed outside, gasping, a heap of dirt and terror. I puked right there, the candy bar I'd eaten coming up in a sour rush. Kyle didn't say a word, just stared back at the cave, his chest heaving. "Look," he croaked finally, pointing. I didn't want to, but I did. In the cave mouth, barely visible in the gloom, stood a figure. Tall, thin, featureless, a shadow that didn't move. My stomach lurched again, but I held it down. We grabbed our stuff and ran, not stopping until we hit Kyle's house. We didn't talk about it after that. Washed my shirt in secret, told ourselves it was just a freak out. A year later, we went back. Older, tougher, or so we thought. The cave was locked tight, plastered with no trespassing signs and warnings of fines, probably for the best. But that wasn't the end. It's been 25 years. I'm not that kid anymore. I've got a job, a mortgage, a life. Kyle moved away, and we lost touch. The park's still there, though I hear it's built up now, trails paved over. I don't go back. I don't need to. Because whatever was in that cave, it didn't stay there. I thought escaping was the end. I was wrong. Whatever we stirred up that day didn't stay buried. It clung to me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. The first sign came a week later, in my bedroom. I was half asleep, the house quiet, when I heard it. A whisper, my name soft and sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. I bolted upright, heart hammering, and flicked on the lamp. Nothing. Just my posters, my desk, the window cracked open to the night. I checked it, locked from the inside, no wind, no explanation. I told myself it was a dream, but my skin prickled, the same way it had in the cave, and sleep didn't come again that night. The dreams started soon after. Every night, I was back there. Tunnels stretching into infinity, walls pulsing like flesh, the air thick with that sour metallic stench. I'd walk, barefoot, the ground slick and cold, and the whispers would follow, calling me deeper. Hands would grab, invisible but relentless, dragging me toward a pit where the screams lived, a black maw that swallowed light and spat out terror. I'd wake up gasping, sheet soaked, my wife's hand on my shoulder, her voice distant through the ringing in my ears. "Nightmare again?" she'd ask, and I'd nod, lying through my teeth. How do you tell someone the dark's alive and it knows you? The scratches came 2 years ago, when I was 38. I woke to a sound. Scritch, 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 like nails on wood. My bedroom door was shut, my wife asleep beside me, the clock glowing 3:17 a.m. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed, crept to the door, and opened it. The hall was empty, but the door, 3 long gashes, deep in the oak, splinters curling like they'd been clawed. I ran my fingers over them, the edges rough, fresh, and my stomach dropped. No cat, no dog. We didn't have pets. I checked the house, locks intact, windows secure. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like it had been watching me. The flashlight was next. I'd kept it, that dollar store relic from the cave, buried in a box in the garage, with old sports gear and junk I couldn't toss. One night, I woke to a faint glow under my bedroom door. My wife was out of town, the house mine alone. I opened it, and there it was. On the kitchen counter, its beam pointed at me like an accusing eye. I hadn't touched it in 25 years. My hands shook as I turned it off, the click loud in the silence, and I locked it in the garage again, double-checking the deadbolt. The next morning, It was back, on my nightstand, still warm, like it had been held. The screams returned last month, real this time. I was home grilling in the backyard, the sun dipping low. They came from the woods a block away, faint, muffled, but unmistakable. That same chorus of agony I'd heard at 13. I dropped the tongs, the burger sizzling forgotten, and grabbed a flashlight. Not that one, a new one, heavy duty. I stepped onto the porch, the screams fading, then surging closer. The tree line was dark still, but I saw it, a shadow tall and thin, standing just beyond the oaks. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, and I felt it in my gut, that same wrongness from the cave. I shouted, waved the light, but it stayed, a silhouette carved from night. I locked myself inside, blinds down, and didn't sleep. The gate was the breaking point. Last night, I woke to tapping. Tap, tap, tap on my bedroom window. My wife stirred, mumbled something, but I was already up, peering through the glass. The yard was empty, moonlight pooling on the grass, until it wasn't. There, by the shed, stood a gate, rusted, ajar, swaying like it had been pushed. We don't have a gate. Never did. My breath fogged the pain, my pulse a drum in my ears, and I saw it. The shadow again, framed in the gate's arch, closer now, its edges blurring like smoke. I grabbed my phone, snapped a picture, but the screen showed nothing, just grass and shed, no gate, no figure. This morning, the gate was gone, but the flashlight, the cave one, was on the porch, lens cracked, light flickering. I burned it in the fire pit, watched the plastic melt, the beam die, but the whispers followed me inside. My name, over and over, from the walls, the floor, the air itself. My wife hears nothing, sees nothing, but she's worried, says I'm losing it. Maybe I am. I've dug deeper, found more. The 1897 collapse wasn't just a tragedy. Survivors spoke of voices, hands, things moving in the dark. One man swore he saw his dead brother down there calling him deeper. The locals say it's the whispering abyss, a thing older than the mines, older than us. A hunger that takes voices, takes lives, takes pieces of you until there's nothing left. I think it took a piece of me that day. I think it's been waiting to take the rest. Tonight, the tapping's back, louder, insistent. The shadow's out there. I feel it. My bat's by the door, my phone's charged, but what good are they? If you're hearing this, if you've made it this far, pray for me. Because whatever's in that cave, whatever followed me home, it's not done. And I don't think it ever will be. Derek thrashed, his laughter turning to snarls. You don't get it, do you? You're all meat out here. That's when he reached for his pistol. I don't know where it came from. His pack, his jacket, somewhere. But suddenly, it was in his hand, the barrel glinting in the firelight. Time slowed. I saw Matt freeze, saw Jen drop the stick, saw Sarah's mouth open in a silent scream. My body moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed my rifle from beside my tent, hunting gear I'd brought just in case, and flicked on the tactical light. 2,000 lumens blasted into Derek's face, blinding him. Put your hands up, I roared, my voice steady despite the adrenaline hammering through me. Or I'll turn your head into a canoe. He froze, the rage drained from his face, replaced by something primal. Fear, raw and animalistic. His hands shot up, the pistol clattering to the ground. Okay, man. I'm your friend, all right? I'm your friend. Friend, I spat, keeping the rifle trained on him. You just tried to kill us. Matt kicked the gun away, his hands shaking. We're done here, trip's over. We didn't waste time. Jen and Sarah stripped Derek of everything, his knife, his hatchet, even his damn car keys, and tossed it all to the far side of camp. Matt shoved him toward his beat-up sedan, parked 100 yards down the trail. "Sit there. Don't move. We're leaving at dawn." Derek didn't argue. He stumbled off, muttering apologies, his bravado gone. We watched him go, the fire crackling behind us, and for a moment, I thought that was it. The nightmare was over. I was wrong. The camp was quiet after that, but it wasn't peaceful. We packed in silence, the weight of what happened pressing down on us. I couldn't shake the image of Derek's eyes, how they'd gone from manic to terrified in an instant. It wasn't just me he'd been scared of. Something else had shifted in him, like he'd seen beyond us, into the dark. "I'm not driving home tonight," I said finally, slinging my pack over my shoulder. "I'm too pissed. There's a motel in Easton, an hour down the highway. I'll crash there." "Good call," Sarah said. "I just want out of here." We doused the fire, loaded the Jeep, and hiked back to the trailhead. Derek's car was still there, a dark shape in the moonlight, but he didn't move, didn't call out. We left him behind, the Hollow swallowing him up as we drove away. I got to the motel around 4 a.m., exhausted but wired. I figured I'd sleep it off, maybe salvage the weekend later. But curiosity, or maybe paranoia, gnawed at me. By morning, I was back on the road, heading to the campsite. I had to know if he was gone. The Hollow was empty when I arrived. No car, no gear, no Derek. Just the cold ashes of our fire and the wind whispering through the trees. I relaxed a little, figuring he'd hauled us out of there. Then I saw it. Right where his car had been parked, in the middle of the dirt, was a pair of white briefs. Not just dropped, filled, a steaming pile of shit. Fresh enough that I could smell it from 10 feet away. The guy had been so scared he'd crapped himself, right there in the open. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed off the cliffs, as it was pathetic, absurd, somehow fitting. But the laugh died in my throat when I heard it. A low, guttural growl from trees, not a bear, not a wolf, something else. I spun, scanning the forest. Moved. The air thickened, the temperature dropping fast despite the morning sun. My rifle was still in my hand, and I gripped it tighter, backing toward my truck. That's when I saw the tracks. They weren't human, not animal either, at least not any I'd ever seen. Long, clawed prints, pressed deep into the dirt, circling the campsite. They wove around where our tents had been, where Derek's car had sat, like something had been pacing, watching, waiting. I didn't stick around to find out what. I got in my truck and peeled out, the Hollow shrinking in my rear view. But the feeling followed me, the sense that whatever had been out there wasn't done. That was 6 months ago. We haven't gone camping since. Matt blames himself, says he should have vetted Derek better. Jen and Chris won't even talk about it. Sarah just shrugs and says, "Some people snap." But I can't shake it. Not Derek's meltdown, not the scream, not those tracks. I started digging after that, researching the Bitterroot Range. Turns out, it's got a history. Hikers disappearing, strange sightings, old trapper tales about things in the hollows, tiki. One story stuck with me. A logger back in the 50s who swore he saw something tall and thin, moving through the trees, something that didn't walk right. He said it mimicked his voice, called his name, until he ran screaming back to town. They found his camp later, torn apart, with tracks just like the ones I saw. The locals call it the Hollow Wraith. They say it doesn't just hunt, it toys with you, drives you mad, feeds on the chaos, and it's been there forever, waiting for people stupid enough to wander into its domain. Derek's gone. No one's seen him since that night. His car turned up a month later, abandoned on a logging road 50 miles away, empty except for that damn knife on the passenger seat. The cops wrote it off as a breakdown, said he probably hitched a ride out, but I know better. He didn't leave on his own. Something took him. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. I've started hearing it, not out in the woods, in my apartment, in the city. A faint tapping on the windows at night, a whisper that sounds like my name. Last week, I found scratches on my balcony door, 3 long gashes in the glass. I don't know if it followed me. I don't know if it's real, but I know one thing. That trip wasn't just about Derek. He was the spark, the chaos it needed to wake up. And now, it's not letting go. So here's my advice. From one sleepless soul to another. If you ever go camping, keep your circle tight. Trust your gut. And if you hear a scream in the night, don't assume it's human. Because out there in the hollows, something's listening. And it's hungry. The abyss holds its secrets tight, doesn't it? Voices that cling, shadows that follow. But not all terrors hide below ground. Some stalk the trails, silent as death, with claws that don't forgive. Our final tale drags us back to the surface. A backpacking trip where the wild turns predator and the hunt never ends. Step carefully. It's already watching. It was supposed to be simple. My wife Laura had never been backpacking, and I figured what better way to break her in than a weekend in the Cascades. I'd done it 100 times. Solo treks, group hikes, you name it. The wild was my church, my reset. So when I pitched the idea, she grinned, her eyes lighting up with that quiet courage I'd fallen for. "Let's do it," she said. And that was that. We picked a trail I knew well. 10 miles through dense pine and cedar, winding up to a ridge with a view that'd make you believe in something bigger. It was late spring, the air crisp but warm, the forest alive with birds and the hum of life. I packed light. Tent, sleeping bags, a revolver for emergencies, standard stuff. Laura carried the food, her pack bouncing as she adjusted to the weight. We hit the trailhead at noon, the sun high, and for the first few miles, it was perfect. Then we saw the tracks. They crossed the path about a mile in, cougar prints, fresh enough that the edges were sharp in the mud. Big too, paws the size of my hand, claws retracted but pressed deep. I crouched, tracing one with my finger. "Not old," I said, keeping my voice steady, "but they're heading up, away from us." Laura peered over my shoulder, her breath catching. "You sure?" "Yeah, they're moving off trail, probably hunting. We'll be fine." I stood, brushing off my hands, and gave her a grin. "Just keep an eye out, city girl." She smirked, but I saw the flicker of nerves in her eyes. We kept going, the tracks fading into the undergrowth, and I pushed them to the back of my mind. Cougars don't mess with people unless they're desperate, and this one was long gone. Or so I thought. We made camp by dusk, a small clearing near a creek, the ridge looming above us like a silent giant. The tent went up easy, a green dome against the darkening trees, and we settled in as rain started to patter on the fabric. It was soothing, that soft drumbeat, and we drifted off, Laura's head on my chest, the revolver tucked by my side. I woke to silence. Not the kind you expect in the woods. No rain, no wind, no crickets. Just a void, heavy and wrong, pressing against my ears. I sat up, careful not to wake Laura, and unzipped the tent flap an inch. The air was cold, damp, and the ground outside glinted wet in the moonlight. Then I saw them, prints, everywhere. Cougar tracks blanketed the clearing, circling the tent in tight, deliberate loops. The rain had washed away ours, leaving only these, hundreds of them, overlapping, fresh. My stomach dropped. I traced one with my light. The same big paws, but closer now. Some pressed so deep the mud had oozed up around them. And there, right by the flap, 2 indentations, shallow and long, where something had pressed its nose against the nylon, sniffing. First my side, then hers. I grabbed the revolver, my pulse hammering, and scanned the trees. Nothing moved, but the silence screamed. Whatever had been here hadn't made a sound, not a twig snap, not a breath. It had circled us, studied us, and we'd slept through it. "Laura," I whispered, shaking her gently. "Wake up." She stirred, blinking. "What's wrong?" "Tracks, cougar, all around us." She sat up fast, peering out. Her face went pale, eyes wide as she took in the prints. "Oh my God, it was here." "Yeah, and quiet. Too quiet." I kept my voice low, the revolver cold in my hand. "We're packing up. Now." We didn't talk much after that, just threw our gear together. The tent half collapsed in our haste. The prints followed us out, 2 sets now, large and small, trailing the path we'd come in on. I gripped the gun tighter, my light cutting through the dark, every rustle making me jump. The cougar hadn't left. It was following us, silent as death, and I couldn't shake the feeling it wasn't done with us yet. That was the first trip. We made it out, shaky but alive, and I chalked it up to bad luck. Laura laughed it off later, said it was a story for the grandkids, but I saw the way she flinched at shadows for weeks. I figured we'd dodged the bullet, that the wild had given us a scare and let us go. I was wrong. 2 years later, we went back. Same trail, same ridge. Call it stubbornness or stupidity. But I wanted to reclaim it, prove we could handle it. Laura was game, braver now, and we packed heavier this time. Bear spray, a louder whistle, the revolver loaded and ready. The forest felt different, thicker, quieter, the air heavy with something I couldn't name. We saw the bears on day 2. 2 black bear cubs tumbling near the trail, claws digging into bark as they climbed a pine. They huffed and played, oblivious to us, and we stopped, watching, a grin tugging at my lips. "Cute little bastards," I muttered, pulling the revolver just in case. Then Laura froze. "She's right there," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I followed her gaze. Through the trees, half hidden in the undergrowth, stood the mother, massive black fur gleaming, eyes locked on us. We were between her and her cubs, a rookie mistake I should have seen coming. My heart slammed against my ribs, the gun slick in my palm. "Don't run," I said, loud enough for the bear to hear. "Just walk, talk." We moved, slow and steady, chatting nonsense. Weather, dinner, anything to sound human. The mother didn't charge, just watched, head tilting as we passed, deciding if we were worth it. Step by step, we put distance between us, and when I dared look back, she was foraging again, cubs at her heels. I holstered the gun, adrenaline crashing, and laughed, a shaky, hollow sound. "That was close," Laura said, her voice trembling but steady. "Too close," I agreed. "But animals. I can handle animals." I shouldn't have said that, because it wasn't the animals that broke me. It was what came after. It wasn't just a cougar that night. It couldn't have been. I've tracked game, studied prints, spent years in the wild. Cougars are stealthy, sure, but they don't circle like that. Don't press their noses to your tent without a sound. don't leave you feeling like prey in a way that twists your soul. No, what came for us that first trip was something else. Something older. Something that didn't belong to the natural order. I call it the Silent Stalker, a name that's haunted my thoughts since I pieced it together. But it's more than a name. It's a presence, a force, a shadow woven into the fabric of the Cascades, waiting for fools like me to stumble into its domain. The first hint came in the tracks. Those prints weren't just big, they were wrong. The paws were too wide, the spacing too deliberate, like it walked with purpose, not instinct. I didn't notice it then, too focused on getting Laura out, but later, in the photos I snapped before we bolted, I saw it. Faint ridges between the toes, almost like webbing, and a fifth claw mark, shallow and curved, where no cougar would have one. It wasn't hunting for food. It was marking us, claiming us, and the silence was its weapon. No growl, no roar, just that oppressive quiet, a void that sucked the life from the forest and left us exposed. On that second trip, it showed itself, or at least, it let me feel it. That growl wasn't animal, it was primal, a sound that vibrated in my bones, low and rolling like thunder trapped underground. It came from everywhere, nowhere, circling us like a storm with no eye. I saw it in flashes, shadows too tall, too thin, darting between the pines, never fully in the light. My flashlight caught glimpses. A limb, sinewy and long, bending wrong at the joints. Eyes glinting red, then gone, higher than any bear's should be. A silhouette that didn't match the trees, swaying like it was part of them, yet apart. It didn't lunge, didn't charge. It played, a predator savoring the chase, letting us know it could take us whenever it wanted. The smell was its signature, musk and rot, thick and choking, like a carcass left to fester in the sun, but alive, pulsing with intent. It hit me that night by the fire, a wave that turned my stomach and lingered in my clothes long after we fled. It wasn't just odor, it was a message, a claim, a stain that marked me as its own. The claws I heard scraping the dirt weren't random. They were rhythmic, deliberate, a metronome of dread counting down to something I couldn't see. And the fire, it shrank, cowered, like it knew what was out there, like it feared the stalker more than I did. The Silent Stalker isn't just a beast, it's a hunter of minds. It didn't kill us that night, didn't need to. It fed on the terror, the uncertainty, the way my hands shook on the revolver, the way Laura's breath hitched every time the growl circled back. It's patient, eternal, a thing that stalked these woods since before men carved trails through them. The ranger logs I found later, yellowed pages in a dusty archive, called it a myth, a legend, but the details matched. The smell, the tracks, the silence. A trapper in 1934 wrote of it tearing his camp apart, leaving no blood, just claw marks and that stench, swearing it whispered his name in the dark. He vanished a week later, his rifle found bent in half. It's not bound by flesh or hunger. It's something else, something that bends the wild to its will. The cougar tracks, the bears. I think they were its scouts, its pawns, driven to us by a will older than the mountains. It watched us sleep that first night, studied us, and when we came back, it remembered. It's not just a predator, it's a memory, a grudge, a shadow that doesn't forgive trespassers. And now, it's mine. Night fell hard that trip, the forest swallowing the last light like a hungry mouth. We camped lower this time, near a stream, the ridge a dark silhouette above us. The fire crackled, casting jagged shadows, and we ate in silence, the bear encounter still fresh. I kept the revolver close, my ears straining for every snap, every rustle. Then I heard it, a low growl, not bear, not cougar, something deeper, guttural, rolling through the trees. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far, and it stopped me cold. Laura's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. What was that? Dunno, I lied, standing gun in hand. Stay here. I stepped beyond the firelight, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the dark. The growl came again, closer, vibrating in my chest, and I swung the light toward it. Nothing, just pines, their needles glinting wet from an earlier rain. But the air shifted, thickened, a scent hitting me, musk, rot, something alive and ancient. Jake, Laura called, her voice tight. Coming, I said, backing up. But the growl circled, now behind us, then to the side. My light darted, catching movement, a flicker of shadow tall and thin, gone before I could lock on. My skin prickled, the hair on my neck standing straight. Get in the tent, I snapped, shoving her inside. I zipped it shut, revolver aimed at the dark, the growl fading then surging. A chorus now, multiple throats, unseen, closing in. The fire sputtered, flames shrinking like they were scared, and I heard claws on dirt, slow, deliberate, pacing us. All night, it stalked, no attack, no charge, just presence, heavy and relentless, a weight that crushed the air from my lungs. By dawn, it stopped, the forest waking with birdsong like nothing had happened. We packed and ran, not stopping until the trailhead, the revolver useless in my shaking hand. That was 6 months ago, but it didn't end at the trailhead. I thought we'd escaped, that the forest would keep its secrets, that Laura and I could laugh it off over beers and call it a close call. She says it was wolves, a trick of the night, anything to make sense of it. But I know better. The Silent Stalker didn't let us go. It followed us, tracked us, and it's been tightening the noose ever since. It started small, subtle enough to doubt. A week after we got back, I woke to a smell. Faint, fleeting, that musk and rot drifting through my apartment window. I checked outside, nothing but the city street, cars parked, sodium lights buzzing. But my skin crawled, and I couldn't sleep. The revolver on my nightstand instead of the drawer. 2 nights later, it was a sound. Claws on pavement, slow and deliberate, circling the building. I grabbed the gun, peeked through the blinds, and saw shadows shift in the alley. Too long, too thin, gone when I blinked. The scratches came next. 10 days ago, I found them on my bedroom window. 5 gashes, deep in the glass, too high for a man, too precise for a branch. They weren't there when I went to bed. I ran my fingers over them, the edges cold and jagged, and felt it. That weight, that presence, watching from somewhere I couldn't see. The next night, a growl woke me, low and close, right outside my door. I bolted up, gun in hand, and flung it open. Empty hall, flickering lights, but the air stank of rot, and the carpet had claw marks, faint but fresh, leading to the stairwell. Yesterday, it got bolder. I found prints in the alley behind my car, big, clawed, circling the tires like it had paced me all night. The webbing was there, the 5th claw, just like the photos from the trail. I snapped pictures, hands shaking. But when I showed Laura, she frowned, said they looked like smudges, nothing more. I checked the files later. They were blank, just grey static, like something erased them. That evening, I heard it again. Growling, not outside, but inside. A rumble from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. I tore the place apart. Cabinets, vents, nothing. But the sound followed, circling me like it had in the tent. Last night, it came closer. I woke to tapping, sharp, insistent, on the living room window. Laura was asleep, the city quiet. but my pulse roared. I crept over, revolver ready, and peeked through the blinds. The street was empty. Then I saw it. Across the road, under a flickering street light, stood a shadow. Tall, thin, swaying like a tree in wind that wasn't there. Its eyes glinted, red and unblinking, locked on me. I aimed the gun, finger trembling. But it didn't move, just watched, waiting. I blinked, and it was gone. But the tapping shifted to the door, the walls, the roof, a staccato of claws claiming every inch of my home. This morning, I found claw marks on my car, deep gouges in the hood, the metal peeled back like paper. The prints were there again, circling the driveway, leading into the trees a block away. I followed them, gun in hand, heart pounding, until they vanished at the edge of the woods, replaced by a smell so thick I gagged, that rot and musk choking the air. Something growled, low and close, and I ran, the sound chasing me back to the house. I don't sleep now. The wild was my sanctuary, but it's turned on me, or something in it has. I've dug deeper, found more, ranger logs from the 20s, a hiker's journal from 89, all describing the same thing. Tracks, smells, shadows that don't die. One entry chilled me. A woman in 1973 swore it followed her home, scratched her walls, growled through her dreams until she moved 1,000 miles away. She left a warning. It doesn't stop. It waits. It's waiting for me. Tonight, the tapping's back. Louder, faster, a rhythm of hunger. The shadow's out there. I see it through the blinds, closer now, its shape blurring into the night. Laura hears nothing, thinks I'm cracking, but I feel it in my bones. It's not done. The revolver's loaded, but what good is it against something that doesn't bleed? If you're hearing this, pray for me, because the Silent Stalker knows me, and it's not letting go. That's where we leave it tonight, sleepless souls, hollows that turn friends to foes, caves that whisper your doom, and trails where the shadows stalk forever. But here's the thing. What if they're not just stories? What if something's still out there listening, waiting for you to step too close? If these nightmares clawed into your skull, hit that like, share them with someone brave enough to watch, and drop a comment. What's the dark chasing you? Subscribe to NoSleep Nightmares Reddit and ring that bell. Help me hit 1,000 subs so the next terror can find you. Sleep tight if you can, because out there, in the dark, it's still awake.